In Japan, record grading didn't begin as a standardized code. It evolved over decades, inside record shops, long before global marketplaces existed. Grading applies almost entirely to used records. Grading exists because records are fragile objects, subjected to handling and use. Once a record has been played, condition matters, not just visually, but sonically. Grading is how sellers and buyers communicate condition, risk, and trust. In Japan, that communication developed face-to-face. Shops graded records for local customers who could inspect records, ask questions, and return the next day if expectations weren't met. This wasn't about creating rules for the world. It was about managing trust across a counter. New records in Japan were never inexpensive. For many decades, newly issued records were priced at 2,000 yen or more, a serious consideration for students and salaried workers. As a result, records were handled carefully. When they changed hands, they entered a robust used market. Used records came from many sources: individual collectors trading up, families selling a departed relative's collection, and shops buying directly from customers. These were long-standing practices built into Japanese retail culture. Grading became the language that made this circulation possible. In post-war Japan, reuse and resale of consumer goods, audio equipment, books, records, and clothing became essential practices long before formal recycling systems existed. What developed was not a culture of disposal, but a culture of stewardship. Used goods were assets, expected to circulate rather than be discarded. Specialized retail shops emerged to support this system. Stores dedicated to books, audio equipment, instruments, and records. Records, in particular, moved continuously through the market. Nothing was assumed worthless. That constant circulation demanded accuracy. A grade had to mean something, because the same record might pass through multiple hands over decades. Japan's used record market was also shaped by supply from abroad. For decades, Japanese shop owners, buyers, and collectors traveled overseas, especially to the United States, bringing records back into Japan in large quantities. These trips, combined with strong domestic circulation of used records, created an unusually deep secondary market. Foreign pressings entered Japan in condition-conscious environments where they were cleaned, evaluated, and priced conservatively. Grading wasn't just descriptive. It protected reputation. Large record chains in Japan developed formal grading systems, not to simplify, but to operate reliably at scale. Grades were conservative. Details were explicit. Disc and jacket were evaluated separately. A record graded conservatively in Japan might receive a higher grade elsewhere, not because it played better, but because expectations were managed differently. The goal was consistency at scale. Independent record shops took different approaches. Some blended Japanese systems with Western grading. Some invented their own scales. Some rejected grading entirely, trusting curation over codes. Despite those differences, grading was always customer-driven. Every shop graded for its own customers, from first-time buyers to long-standing regulars. Grading reflected philosophy as much as condition. Record fairs bring different grading philosophies into direct contact. Dozens of sellers operate side by side, each bringing their own systems and margins for error, relying on buyer judgment. In this environment, buyers inspect records themselves. Notes become provisional. Symbols, disclaimers, side markings. Responsibility shifts from seller to buyer, subject to inspection. Once records leave Japan, grading operates under different constraints. Export-facing sellers must translate local grading language for distant buyers. Platforms introduce standardized terms. Proxy services insert intermediaries. Distance increases risk. The further a buyer is from the record, the more precise grading must become. Some sellers build their own e-commerce sites for international buyers. Others rely on global marketplaces, where grading is seller-reported and buyer-policed. Proxy services open access to domestic listings never designed for export. In every case, grading becomes a bridge between physical reality and remote expectation. Grading systems emerge from how records are bought, sold, and inspected. They reflect proximity, scale, and the ability or inability to listen, return, and negotiate. In Japan, grading evolved inside shops, shaped by face-to-face exchange and long-term accountability. As records moved through chains, fairs, platforms, and across borders, grading adapted to new constraints. What looks strict, inconsistent, or conservative in isolation is better understood as contextual. In Japan, grading isn't fixed, it's situational.